Hi folks, welcome to another video on Android CICD series. In the previous video, all that we have done is configure build for the local run. But this is not sustainable when you are working in large teams. You don't want to be dependent on one person's laptop or that person's availability to make the builds work. The only way to solve this particular problem is to move this to a commonly shared machine. That is where everyone can access and can run at any point in time without any person's individual dependency. And the solution is GitHub Actions. Think of GitHub Actions as a script that lives with your code. It is not directly the application code. You can say, like, the logic of a GitHub Actions is if this happens on my repo, do these things automatically. When I say this happens, for example, a code push happens or a code merge happens or somebody triggers something manually. So those are the trigger points. So if those things happen, then do certain things. It could be a static code analysis, could be a SonarQube code analysis, it could be a lint, or it could be combination of all these things, which is basically the build creation. So now what we will do is we will create a minimal GitHub action workflow, a very basic skeleton. So let's do it.
Folks, CodeTutor here, and my name is Anil Deshpande.
So this is the application that we have built, and the way it works is you always put your GitHub action file, the script, in a .yml extension file. It has to be under workflows, and under workflows any name.yml file. I am going to just use the android-ci.yml. YML basically stands for yet another markup language, which is a very easily readable, humanly readable markup language. The intention here is to not to teach YML itself, but to basically explain you how what we used to do manually can be now done through this particular script file, YML script file. Typically, the script that you want to run, it has a name. So here I am going to call it by the name Android CI. Just remember this wording Android CI because this is what you will actually end up seeing in GitHub website. Then you want to basically tell when you want to run this particular script. In this case, I am saying that this runs when I explicitly manually run this particular workflow. Workflow CI one and the same. There are other options. There is something called as cron, which basically means you schedule it at a certain day or at a certain time, or you can say that you trigger this when a push happens or a merge happens. That can also be done. So in this case right now I am keeping it pretty simple. I am basically trying to manually run it. After that you have jobs. Jobs are basically the tasks that you want to run. The first thing is you want to build, and to build you need a machine. It is usually called as runner. Runner is like your laptop. This is the machine on which your script will run. So what we are saying is I want Ubuntu latest version, and the steps that need to be done on this particular machine are, first thing is you check out the code. And to check out the code, there is already a predefined action. What do you mean by predefined action? Somebody has already written a script on how to check out the code from a GitHub repository. Think of it like what exactly you would have done on your local machine. You would have checked out from a remote GitHub repository. So in this case, the code from a GitHub repository should be checked out to this Ubuntu latest machine. So that is what this is doing. This checkout v5 is a predefined action. Think of it like a predefined script that already resides somewhere. We are just reusing it, which basically helps you to check out the code from this particular repository. Once you check out the code, you set up the Java JDK. On local machine also, your machine has Java JDK, but in this case it doesn't have because it is a pretty clean slate Ubuntu runner. So you need to set up the necessary thing to basically make this work. So what I am doing is I am setting up the JDK. To do that, once again I am using a predefined action that is uses actions slash setup Java v5. This will basically help you to set up the JDK version, and you can say which flavor you want. I am using a flavor called as Tamarind. There are multiple flavors of JDK. There is something called as a Zulu. There are many other such flavors, but Tamarind is pretty standard for these kinds of work, and it should be good enough. Then you specify which Java version that you need. I need 21 because on my local machine also I am using 21. So I want to rather adhere to the same JDK. Then once you have the Java, you start building the APK file. You want to create a debug APK file. And once again for that, I run a command, that is Gradle w assemble debug. This is the same command you would have executed on the local terminal. All I am doing is I am using the chmod command because you need an admin access to be able to run this particular command on a remote runner. That is the reason why I am adding chmod +x. Other than that, there is nothing more to it. Later, once the APK is generated, I need to upload a APK to some place from where I can download that particular APK, which is basically a artifact, a file. So this part, which is uploading the APK, is also done through another predefined script, that is upload artifact at v5. This is once again another predefined action in GitHub Actions. And then we want to give the name to that particular APK file. That is the reason why we are using with the name debug APK and the path where we exactly want this particular APK file. And with this, we are basically done. So now I want to run this particular code. But the question is, where do we run this particular code? We will have to run this particular code from the GitHub repository. So if you come to the CICD secret, come to the actions, this is how it looks like. This CICD is the name that we used when we created the YML file. Android CI is the same thing that we are seeing here. Now what we will have to do is, there is an option here called as run workflow. You have to select the branch. The branch on which I am right now here is live demo. So here also I should select live demo and then click on the run workflow. And then you will have to just wait and watch and see what happens. Well, couple of things as this runs. You have to ensure that whatever the YML file that you have here, the exact replica of this particular YML file is also there on the default branch of your Git repository. In my case, the default branch is main. If there is a difference between this script and in the main branch, then you will start seeing the problem when you run the workflow. So please ensure that whenever you create a new script on a non-default branch, you cherry pick it and put it in the default branch of your repository. The way GitHub works is it expects the workflow file that you want to be running in the default branch. I have already done that. That is why you are able to see this, and you can see that it failed. So let's see why it failed. Let me open it. Yeah, you can see what went wrong. Demo API key not found in the local properties. But if you recall, we have the local properties file defined and it already has the API key that we really want. But then why is this thing complaining that it is not there? Well, the local.properties file that you have, it is local to the machine and it is not part of your GitHub repository. And as I had said in the earlier video, you should never commit your secrets like API keys, SDK keys to the Git repository. So what we had done is, in the ignore file, we had added local.properties file so that this thing is only available in the local machine. But now we have a problem. If we don't have this demo API key, then our build will fail. But we can't put this particular local.properties file to the repository. Then how do we solve the problem? Well, what we can do is, you have to put this particular demo API key as a secret to your GitHub Actions. What do I mean by that? If you come up here go to the repository and go to the settings. There is an option like secrets and variables, and there if you go to actions, there is an option like new repository secret. You can add a key value pair here. Copy this value and update the secret. So let me complete this particular flow, and now we have the demo API key. Now let me just go back to the actions and let's run the CI again. But before we do that, we have to take care of one more thing, which is we have to update the build.gradle.kts file so that it can read the demo API key in the remote CI environment. Right now, if you see here, it is reading it from the local.properties file, and that is what we are using to set up the demo API key. And when this is running remotely, this will fail because it will still try to fetch it from the local file, which is not there. It has to fetch it from the secret that we just configured in the GitHub. This option is only applicable for local run, but before it comes here, it should try to fetch it from GitHub Actions secret. So that can be done like this: system.get environment same key, and that should solve this particular problem. Before you run this, make sure that you push this particular code to the remote. Let me run this thing again.
A few moments later.
Well, you can see that you are still getting that demo API key is not found because we have to basically inject this particular demo API key in the workflow file. What do I mean by that? I have to put it as a part of build APK command, where for the environment, I have to say that demo API key should be fetched from secrets, and that should fix the problem. Let me commit this and cherry pick and put it on the default branch. While it is running, you can actually click on this and see how is this going. Looks like it has fixed the problem. Let's wait. If this succeeds, then it has to go to the next task, which is upload the APK.
A few moments later.
Yeah, you can see that the build is showing as green, and if you just go back here, this is green. So the latest run is green, and you can also see that this is the debug APK that got generated, the size, and you can just download this and give it to your whatever team, the testing team, whatever it is. So this is how a typical CI/CD run would look like. But what we have done here is pretty simple. But when you are working with build variants, multiple dimensions, different environments, then this can become little bit more complex, and you will have to have some kind of a strategy on how do you want to manage the secrets. So, and that is where the concept of the secret management comes into picture. So in the next video, I will show you how to deal with that level of complexity when you want to do that. So stay tuned for the next video. That brings us to the end of this particular video. Don't forget to like, comment, share the video and subscribe to the channel. Take care. Bye.